If you use the internet on a daily basis, and chances are you do, you probably don't put much thought into cybersecurity. You know, your network connections, the pages you visit, the files you download. You should be thinking about these all the time. Welcome to And Security for All. Your host is Kim Hakim. We're here to help you understand, in general terms, how and why your cybersecurity should be kept in check. Now, here is Kim Hakim.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another episode of And Security for All. I'm your host, Kim Hakim. Super excited to have my guests here today. We're actually, for those of you that don't know, I'm the CEO of FutureCon Events. We host cybersecurity conferences all over North America, and we have kicked off 2026 with a huge bang. Every event we've had right now, we've had to shut registration down just because we've been at literally standing room only. We just came off of our Baltimore show last week, which again was another great event. We're going to be in Detroit this week on Thursday, trying to figure out how to get all the people in the space that we have. We've never had a situation like this where not sure what's going on out there, but we are happy to have everyone come and join us. If you do try to register for that event and the codes don't work, you can always join us virtually. We always provide the virtual option for anyone to join us. We stream all of our events live. So my guest today, with that being said, I actually met him in Detroit, and not only is he a great leader in the industry, he's also a good friend of mine and FutureCon. So I'm very happy to have Arun DeSouza. Welcome to the show, Arun.
Kim, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the kind introduction. And I was smiling when you said your events are sold out. I am not surprised because, as you noted, I've been a friend of FutureCon a number of years, and all your events are stellar between the community engagement and the sponsor support. So that's great.
Yeah, it's just been crazy. I've been doing this for, it ages me, but a couple of decades plus. And I've just never seen, very well vetted audience too, or it's very all cybersecurity practitioners. And again, I met you through one of our events. It's really funny, throughout the country, I run into a lot of people with the same last name as you, just FYI.
That's good to know.
Yeah. I can't remember, just this year, there was someone, I think it was in Chicago. That's kind of close to you, but there's, I think there's someone out in LA. I'm always asking, do you know Arun? So, but anyway, good seeing you, Arun. I'm excited to see you. Always love, there's certain cities that I can't always make every event, but there's certain cities that I will not go to, and Detroit is one of those. So I'm looking forward to being in. I think it's going to be raining. Is it raining today?
I haven't been out yet, but it doesn't look like it.
Well, it's better than snow. So, yeah. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about you, Arun. Let's talk about your career before we dive in for our audience today. Again, if you all have any questions, if you want to just put them over in the chat, we'll take any questions. But let's talk about when I first met you, where you were then and where you are now, and how your new company is going. Tell us a little bit about that, but let's just back up and just let's tell me about how you got to where you are now.
Well, I'll start at the very beginning. I was thrown feet first into the fire as the CISO of a global automotive manufacturer in 2003. And over a span of time, I built that program from scratch, leading a wide-scale security transformation, which was a two-phase, which won numerous awards, case studies, and whatnot. And then later on, fast forward to 10 years later, I started another security program, but this time the difference was integrating security and privacy from the get-go as a holistic, approach. That was about from 2015, and over the years, I made a lot of friends in the industry, like you, Kim, and a lot of other leaders and practitioners. I'm very happy to be part of this industry, and currently I do advisory work with tech companies, but I also am an adjunct professor at Lawrence Tech University, and I'm now the president of the Detroit chapter of the ISSA. And the thing I love most about this industry is the fact that we're always better together and people are always willing to help each other out.
Yeah, that definitely our industry is such a great industry. And, I've always, this second time around with this second company, the biggest thing for me is I've been trying to advocate for women in cyber. And I do sit on the WC's board, but I definitely don't have the time to give them what I wish I had to give them. But the biggest thing I try to do is just give them support and try to push women in the industry. Just like, as you know now, did you say you took over the president of ISSA?
Yeah, just hot off the press, yes, but the Detroit chapter.
Yeah, that's a big commitment doing those roles, and you guys have a very active chapter. So congratulations and good luck to that, because it's taking on. Last week we had the CEO from Contrast Security, and he was one of the founders of OWASP, and which was 20 years ago. So it's great that we all do our part in helping support all these nonprofits, because that is really where we bring a lot of people together, and we love working with all the nonprofits. So congratulations on stepping up and taking that role, because I know it's a big job, because I tried to do it with WC's and I just couldn't manage my full-time job and that job. So.
But you're highly successful. The one thing I will add is we're looking forward. Just recently on LinkedIn, we posted something about starting the new year, the Renaissance, which actually has ISSA in it. And we're planning at some point to organize a Cyber Renaissance Summit with some of the, partner organization alliances, like which we'll, of course, announce. And the opportunity for us to bring people together across the spectrum, whether it's practitioners, leaders, sponsors, whatever, right? Because at the end of the day, we are better together. And my favorite phrase, you've heard me speak it ad nauseum over the years, is the power of federation, right? Those alliances that lift all of us up.
I agree, absolutely. And you're such a force in the Detroit and the whole Detroit community. So what a great catch of getting you as their president. So kudos on that. And then you left, you were prior to ProFortis Solutions, prior to starting that company. Let our listeners know what you were doing prior to that, because you were the CISO at Nexteer, right?
I was the CISO at Nexteer. That was from 2015 to 2023, where, like I noted earlier, I built integrated security and privacy program from the ground up, they worked a lot with a lot of organizations, but also led the privacy mobilization for GDPR as part of that. That was a big thing, especially because the company has European operations. And prior to that, of course, 2003, I was at Energy Automotive System, where is the first security program I built from scratch. And the thing is, basically, some of my calling cards through all of those were not just integrating security and privacy, but strategic planning, cloud security, IoT security, and risk management and strategic planning. So those are sort of the pillars on which I built those programs. But above all of those is really the power of federation, and that is promoting the alliance across all spectrum of the business, right? In different business partners, etc. Because none of my team's successes could have happened without the support of the business and those partners that we had in the business, but also external partners. And I think many a time external partners helped me out and a company I was without by coming to the table and win-win synergies. And that's where I coined the phrase power of federation, because I think everyone wins when anyone wins, right?
Absolutely. So, again, congratulations on all your success. Do you miss that role, being at a huge corporation like that, running the Chief Information Security Officer role?
Well, I spent 2 long terms, one at Energy, which is now Plastic Omnium, and then at Nexteer. So for 20 years, that's quite a commitment, and I think I miss, the people more because I'm so used to a people person, Kim. But I think it's, at some point you got to move on to the next chapter, and I have. So I think I enjoy my advisory work, the community organizations, teaching, and everything. And it was time. So to some extent, I miss it. But again, I think I'm quite fortunate to have been able to step away and continue on in interacting with the wider community, and helping out. So no regrets.
Well, it's just, and our conversation today is talking about, disrupt the breach, the new cyber reality. And this is not what we're going to talk about, but the new cyber reality it's so tough for the CISO nowadays. It's changed, as you know. It's kudos and my hats off, even though you are still acting as a advisory CISO. It's just so much. I don't know how you guys sleep at night, honestly.
One thing I will say is, I've been tracking the evolution of the CISO role. I started off back in the day in 2003. It was a technical CISO role where, in fact, the CEO of the company said, "You're doing a good job. I neither see nor hear you." And that was actually a compliment. I was not offended. I knew what he meant. But then we became the business aligned CISO, like the BISO and all that. And phase 3 was the risk focused CISO, where you're sort of navigating the balance between value protection, value creation. And then as we went full force into the industrial revolution, we had what I coined the term of the transformational CISO, working with CIOs and the larger business to enable and secure digital transformation. But today, I think with this pace and scope of change and the massive disruption all over, whether it's AI, quantum computing, and what have you, I think there's a new era of the CISO. You go from technical, business aligned CISO, risk focused CISO, transformational CISO. Today, I think the CISO has to be revolutionary because you have to be able to manage change, communication, storytelling, so many things. You have to be such a multifaceted individual and someone with a real spine and backbone as well at the same time, not only just talking, but doing, right? So enacting all those dimensions of plan, do, check, act, and sometimes all of them at once. And truly, I think some CISOs live all the 5 roles any given day or any given week. Just my way of framing to say how much the CISO value to enterprises has come on. Make sense, Kim?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I just can't say enough attributes to, the CISO roles and really the whole security teams that fall under them, because that's why I'm always just overwhelmed by how crowded our events go, because it's hard to get out of the office and leave a day, there. And that's why we keep things in a virtual mode as well. But let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the emerging cyber trends, and what are some of the key emergent cyber trends that are at the top of your mind today?
Yeah, give me a second. I can think of 5 cyber trends. The first one is, my words are the rise of cyber resilience. Because CISOs by nature now are having to move beyond a prevention-focused approach towards building organizational resilience and prioritizing recovery. Because as complex attacks keep happening, prioritizing speedy recovery and operational restoration is very important. Therefore, boards are interested in metrics now like mean time for clean recovery, right? But the other point is we need to be integrating risk management and business continuity at the same time. So it's rather broader swath of the business, not just security is a team sport, and CISOs have to work with the business departments. The second thing that's on my mind today is supply chain risk, because as the old adage goes, a chain is as strong as weakest link. And typically attackers are now attacking the less resourced 3rd and 4th party vendors to gain access to larger networks. And we've seen some pretty high profile breaches in the past, which I shall not name. But an interesting factoid that I recollect came out last year is that the World Economic Forum, 54% of large organizations view supply chain risk as a larger threat than ransomware. Okay, and this is a true factoid. But also then in that realm, There's regulatory pressure as well because new regulations such as the CERCIA in the US, NIS2 Andorra in the EU, and so on, are now holding organizations more accountable for the security practices of their supply chain partners, which is hard because you sometimes and many times have no control over, right? The third thing on my mind, having come from manufacturing and so true, is operational technology or OT security, right? Because I see in manufacturing, especially IT and OT systems are converging. So therefore, security mobilization needs to cascade down from the enterprise network down to the industrial control systems on factory floors in manufacturing, right? Therefore, collaboration between IT and OT teams is absolutely vital as the explosion of OT devices, just like on the internet itself, but even manufacturing as well, because they try to use things like sensors, improving predictive analytics and whatnot, right? The other thing that also is, as so many of these manufacturing devices, they have to talk about just quickly secure remote access by suppliers, because sometimes, if there's not proper zero trust network access segmentation, that can be a risk for the larger enterprise. That's OT security. The fourth one is software vulnerabilities. We live in what's today called the API economy. Kim, I think you've probably heard of that, meaning modern digital era applications are built from open source code and microservices, which may very well inherit vulnerabilities from the components, increasing the attack surface. And the fifth one is, of course, the one that I didn't want to talk about, I'm going to anyway, is regulatory accountability and compliance, because the regulatory landscape is getting very, very complex. And CISOs by nature must navigate an alphabet soup of regulations like the EU AI Act and the GDPR, US SEC rules, state level privacy laws, and whatnot. And therefore, automated compliance tools are now becoming a necessity to manage this complexity. And unfortunately, it's a fact of life. We've seen this. Some regulations are now holding the CISO personally responsible in the event of a breach, and it's kind of a little bit scary for a CISO these days. So, Kim, that's all I had from the emerging trends. Your thoughts, my friend?
Well, I mean, it is scary for the CISO nowadays in more ways than just the attack. It's what's your thoughts about the personal liability of the CISO nowadays?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is, depending on the industry and though based on the regulation, I think companies need to help CISOs and buy cyber insurance for them, because I don't think CISOs can always afford it for themselves. I haven't looked into it, but I think if you really want to keep your CISO and you show trust in them, they need to support them by doing what's necessary, because if you want to be, because it's not if there's a breach, it's when there will be a breach. And sometimes you don't discover it today, tomorrow, it may be day after or months later down the road, because these hackers might be within. So the thing is, you don't want then, at some point in time, the CISO to face saying, well, gee, you and your team didn't discover this for all this time, and so you're liable for whatever, right? So I think one needs to look into that. That subject can be a topic of a completely different chat, Kim. Honestly, I have a lot of thoughts, but not today. I'll only say this is vital and important for CISOs to look at it and not bury their heads in the sand, but companies that employ CISOs to support them, to protect them as well, right? Because let's face it, first thing you do when you drive a car out of a dealership is to buy cyber insurance, right? The car insurance. Why shouldn't the CISO have cyber insurance for personal liability? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just kind of on a side note, I have kids that I'm still buy cars for. Well, just one really, but I went to I don't know. I went to go check on her insurance on something because it had broken down, and I had found out a car I got 2 years ago, I forgot to add on my insurance. And I was like, oh my God, thank God nothing happened. And I got, it was a leased car. So I have to think that the dealer had some sort of insurance on it. But again, that's how scary it is when you're talking about insurance. And then, but I am insured, and that was just a mistake, and that's not the way I live my life. But anyway, but that is just, it's the same. It's a good analogy when you think about the CISOs and cyber insurance. And then you mentioned, it's not about if you get attacked, it's when you get attacked. And, talking about that, what do you think are some of the evolving attack surfaces and attack tactics that you're seeing today?
One of them I just noted is third party and supply chain risk. A few more words on that. Large scale incidents are going to be very likely due to compromise of vendors and third party platforms themselves, especially in e-commerce. Due to the increased dependency of the external services and APIs, notably the API economy. I mentioned that earlier. But now, ransomware. Ransomware today, we see sort of these singular things, right? Just one off. But I think we're going to come to the era of hybrid ransomware, where ransomware will combine things like data encryption, data theft, and sustained service disruption across a target subsidiary and supply ecosystem, not just, just going for the whole kit and caboodle. Kind of like the denial of service by ransomware, if Arun's words, okay? The third thing is, I think, cloud and SaaS vulnerabilities. Look, the cloud is the de facto cornerstone of a digital era, right? And as companies go more and more to the cloud using all kinds of services, right? Whether it's across the tiers of software as a service, database as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, attackers will start increasingly focus on these cloud environments, exploiting cloud misconfiguration, which is always one of the top security things in the year you find, stolen access keys, and launching, OAuth type worms, if you will, to move laterally across connected SaaS platform, right? The great thing, things are connected, but then, once you're in and you're able to navigate, then it increases the risk. And the last thing is probably, given my manufacturing roots is, or having worked at a utility during my doctoral dissertation, it's critical infrastructure targeting, especially in this era of geopolitical tensions. It'll drive more focused and specific attacks against critical infrastructure, I do believe. For example, water, communications, energy, electricity. And I expect that just like 20 years ago, there was this big IoT security problem. They came out IoT security standards. I expect there'll be some mandatory federal security standards for the critical infrastructure sector that will also come.
Yeah, that's a lot. There's, and when we're talking about all of that, and then we kind of turn it over to the human side, what do you think the connection is between the human cyber element and the business strategy?
Oh, that is a very, very good question. Just give me a second to frame my thoughts. I think pillar number one is executive accountability. And why do I say that? I think it's quite likely that major lawsuits will hold executives personally liable for rogue AI actions, for example, or significant security failures which may occur. We touched upon that earlier. And this will elevate AI risk to the boardroom level. So far, it's been, the privacy, the traditional security, but the AI risk, that will also be elevated as well. The next thing is, I mentioned it earlier, is I think the shift to resilience and recovery, the shift from breach prevention, which will assuming compromise and advocating for planning for rapid recovery and business continuity. Remember, I said earlier, security is a team sport, and that's a cross-functional business collaboration. It's not a security thing, not an IT thing. All folks need to work together for this integrated recovery and business continuity. The third thing that comes to our mind is the quantum computing threat, because I worry a lot about the harvest now, decrypt later threat, which will accelerate the need for complex migration to post-quantum cryptography, PQC standard, as the standards as the quantum timeline shrinks. I think NIST a couple of years ago came out some of these standards, but why I'm mentioning that in the human element? Well, it's because I think it's time for public-private partnerships and intra-private partnerships, community things, start working on that together, because that's a problem that is far more complex than anything the industry has faced so far. And the last thing that comes to our mind is zero trust as a standard. I think zero trust architecture will move from a strategy to a compliance mandate and a baseline operational standard for security and access in manufacturing, in particular, hybrid and multi-cloud environments. And we know that zero trust is not just technical; it spans all dimensions of the people, process, and technology triad.
It seems like, zero trust is all we ever heard for so long. And now with AI in the picture, I I'm not here. I mean, we all have that in the back of our heads, zero trust, trust nothing, but we don't hear it. I don't hear it in, the speakers talking anymore, because everything has switched over to AI. Everyone's talking about AI now. So with that being said, what is your thought about AI? And do you think AI is our friend or is it our enemy, or what is your insight on AI?
I would say honestly, AI is fundamentally reshaping the threat landscape for both attackers and defenders. So let's start from the attack side, right? We have AI-powered cybercrime because AI attackers will be using generative AI to create more sophisticated and scalable attacks. For example, phishing, deepfakes, voice impersonations, etc., that are impossible for employees to detect. I remember reading a story a year or two ago where there was such a convincing CEO deepfake video where there was financial fraud committed. They're that good. The next thing is malicious code is being developed with AI to automatically adapt and mutate. So it's very hard to detect this with traditional signature-based security systems. But now we come to the really sort of the kicker, the democratization of AI for attackers, meaning less skilled attackers can now use AI to automate the identification, exploitation of vulnerabilities at a much faster pace because I've heard of these kits out there and things that AI can put in these hands. So, okay, we talked about the attack side. Now the defense side. AI for defensive capabilities. I think organizations are already leveraging AI to strengthen the defenses and scale the security operations. For example, AI can assist with incident triage, investigation, response actions, freeing security teams to focus on more complex threats. And then AI-powered security information event management EDR tools can analyze vast data sets to identify anomalies and predict vulnerabilities in real time. Now, the thing is, back in the day, there was this famous saying, Kim, you and I have chatted about it before, is a CISO cannot protect what he or she cannot see. Well, meaning visibility is great. You need visibility, right? But actually, I think in the new era now, visibility is not enough. It's good, but it's not enough. And what do I mean by that? You're now transmitting an era of observability. And you may be wondering, how is observability different from visibility? It's actually, my words, visibility on steroids, where these AIs can take the data and initiate workflows and corrective actions automatically. So obviously, there's got to be some level of human oversight for that. So I think those are some of the ways that I think you can compare and contrast. Is AI friend or foe? And like I said, it's both. Does any of that resonate, Kim?
Well, I think it would just go on to my next question of what are some of the AI driven threats and defenses that we could, there's so many, I don't even know how you could pinpoint one, but what if you had to pinpoint it down to some of the threats and defenses that we can be doing as practitioners as far as defenses against the threats, what would you say that is?
Yeah, first let's talk about what the threats are, so we can not open our eyes per se, but be aware of them. Right? Is the first is autonomous attacks. I see, just like we used to have the denial of service attacks at the network level. If you die in attack that shut down the internet some years ago, this large scale attacks. I think I see adversaries or bad actors using AI predator swarms to launch self-correcting autonomous attacks at, like, Star Trek The New Generation says, at warp speed, right? And therefore drastically reducing the time from vulnerability discovery to exploitation. It's going to be so fast. And deepfakes and identity exploits. I think I talked earlier, this flawless real-time deepfakes and AI-generated synthetic identities, which, how are you going to detect social engineering? It's going to be almost impossible, right? Therefore, what does it do? We talk all about digital trust, don't we, Kim? But it's actually going to jeopardize the authenticity of all manner of digital interactions if you're not careful. And then, of course, go straight to the heart of the matter. I think adversaries will target AI systems themselves through data poisoning, for example, corrupting training data, introducing bias, prompt injection, and therefore hijacking the AI agent actions and actually turning them in sort of, let's think of a term here, let's say autonomous insiders, if you will, right? Okay, so we talked about the attacks or the threats. Now let's talk about the defenses, right? So I think AI agents will be operationalized in SOC centers to handle alert triage and automated containment powered by observability, right? So therefore, human analysts can spend more time on strategy and oversight. And why is that? It's because AI algorithms can analyze vast data sets to identify anomalies and anomalous behavior and proactively block threats like malware and ransomware in real time, right? Something the old systems couldn't do. Then AI can also profile the normal user and network behavior to spot deviations from the normal that might actually signal insider threat or a compromised account. And AI can also help security teams to analyze threat intelligence, summarize incidents, automate tasks, and to my point earlier, helping analysts to focus on strategy and oversight. Thoughts, Kim?
Well, is there anything that you're specifically like, what scares you and I hate to use the word scare, but what bothers you? What's your concern of? I got to get ahead of this before it comes to me or before I have to deal with this. Like, what would your advice be? Again, we always go back to, being careful of everything you're opening and going back to zero trust. But I feel like AI is so far past some of the things that equate with zero trust, because when you have the deepfakes and things that we don't even know are real, what would your advice be for our listeners to stay ahead of that?
So I think initially, the first thing is just to sort of frame and talk just for 30 seconds about some of the AI data security risk, and then I'll answer your question of what could be some mitigation strategies, right? So the first thing is data poisoning. I talked about a minute ago. It's actually introduction of malicious data into training data sets to corrupt or manipulate AI models. The second thing is adversarial attacks. It's crafting malicious inputs to deceive AI models into making incorrect decisions. Then model theft. We used to talk about IP theft. Well, now model theft is also IP theft, right? Replicating proprietary AI models for malicious purposes or competitive advantage. And then privacy leakage, especially, because of GDPR and DORA and all those things. AI models might inadvertently reveal sensitive information from the training data. If you remember back in the day, we used to get Power BI or, BI, take protected data and generate a view. People should do it so fast they forget to put the permissioning, right? So same thing with AI. So I sort of frame what the AI data security risks are. So what are some of the mitigation strategies, right? So give me a minute. I would say a few things. Number one is you got to start with an AI policy developed with the business, okay? Because that can then help you implement robust data validation auditing processes, right? And then enhancing model security with differential privacy and secure access control, that would be step 2. And I think this is sort of no-brainers. Auditing and testing AI systems for vulnerabilities regularly. Going back to the day when mobile apps started coming out, people used to just deploy them at scale, and then they might have been breaches and issues. We got to take the same level of rigor that we learned from that lesson and adopt it for AI and do it. The fourth thing is doing the first 3 steps is not good enough unless you're going to adopt ethical AI practices, for fairness, transparency, and accountability. In order to do those 4 steps, the most important thing I would say is step number 5 is leveraging cross-functional stakeholder collaboration and trusted partnerships, and using actually regulatory compliance, as a tailwind or a business driver to help that cause, right? And then implementation of governance and audit processes to mitigate compliance risk. And within that, some of the dimensions one needs to think about are metadata management, data lineage, observability, and data governance. And then, one thing that I always talk about is in Arunism is AI development lifecycle, just like the SDLC, right? So you have to test, sandbox, and calibrate to identify AI vulnerabilities, measure model robustness, the source data congruence, and hopefully mitigating or even avoiding poisoning or toxicity or detecting it early. And then the eighth thing is probably deployment of tooling to enable observability, red teaming, and evaluation workflows across critical systems to augment AI risk framework. A policy and a framework is not good enough. In order to enact it and activate it, you need tooling. Okay. And nine, no AI you can be able to run by itself, right? I mean, you need to utilize human oversight for safety, compliance, and decision validation to combat hallucinations and inaccuracy. Now, I will say that I'm very sort of bullish on reinforcement learning, okay, where the AI through risk reward model self-trains itself. But I think that can be a whole subject for another chat. Kim, is it depends on the industry you're in, because I think reinforcement learning might be apropos for one industry but not for the other. I don't know. And last but not the least is to leverage agent orchestration platforms to reduce the complexity of defining and sequencing interactions between external AI agents. Because just like we have those OAuth worms traversing cloud, right? Same sort of things with this AI agents across multiple platforms. How do you secure those transmissions? Thoughts, Kim?
Well, with everything moving so fast at such a rapid speed, what do you think the challenges are of the security teams? And now we're seeing new titles, we're seeing new AI titles, we're seeing AI officers. I mean, and if these corporations can't even afford to keep a security team in place, how are they going to afford to hire more people to stay on top of the framework of their security posture?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is, what you just asked me is, how do organizations effectively evolve security frameworks for AI? Because just like I noted earlier, the frameworks insofar as themselves are not enough. So just like we have we CISOs, we this and we that, I think there's going to be also virtual AI security advisors. All those are coming, but whether it's people inside the company or services, I think there are certain things or recommendations that I would give for organizations or these service providers that would do it. The first is, you need to be able to use AI to monitor user behavior patterns, identify anomalies that could indicate suspicious activity or potential breaches. And this is a zero trust principle. It's nothing new. Just using AI to enact it, right? And then implementing systems that can dynamically adjust security measures based on user activity and detected threats. And that was observability in action. I mentioned that earlier. And then AI can also help. So employing AI-driven authentication methods that verify continuous behavior patterns, therefore making it much harder for attackers to impersonate users. The fourth thing is fostering, collaboration across key teams like IT, legal, compliance, and operations teams, because all these things you can do on your own as IT or security. The business needs to support it, starting with the policy-driven framework and governance processes and actions, right? Just people, process, technology, after all. And last but not the least, providing ongoing security training for staff to recognize and respond to emerging threats. But in addition to that, the AI policy is not enough. I think there's got to be this evolving sort of Bible of reference use cases that each department go to. So I'm in marketing, say I want to get some sort of market intelligence. Is it okay to put it in Chat GPT? Yes or no? So just kind of trying to support the users, with this. Now we're talking about security training for the AI age, not just the classical security training or privacy training, but AI related security and privacy training. I think that those are the recommendations I would make, Kim.
What are your thoughts about the maybe at an organization and people that are sitting on their laptops and using ChatGPT for their daily, every minute, of their work, their 8 hours of work? and not necessarily just the security people, the other people in the organization. What kind of threat do you think that, is going to develop for that organization?
Well, I mean, the most obvious thing, I think there was a story about Samsung a year or 2 or 3 year ago where some people they wanted to cut their cycle times in developers, and they took some Samsung proprietary code and put it into Chat GPT, saying, help me improve this code, kind of thing, right? Because once it's out there, you don't have any control. And so sometimes people don't realize what it is, the risk. It's like, in unwittingly, it's an insider threat, right? Because you don't know, you're trying to do your job much faster and putting it out there. So that's why I was saying earlier, as CISO and the business need to have this sort of evolving reference use case Bible to keep updating it and sending encyclicals to users. It's not going to be enough because there's always going to be something new. But I think we need to be able to coach, the user community and business leaders on how to safely use AI. But that's why having an AI policy is step one. Having the framework is important, but having reference use cases by department that's kept up to date, where people can go and refer to and do that, but also have them take mandatory training, once or twice a year on this evolutionary Bible, because you can publish anything and people aren't going to read it, right? So you need to gamify it, just like we used to gamify security training. So it's kind of my thought, Kim. Does it make sense?
It does make sense. And maybe wrapping this all up, since we're nearing the end of the show, how do you promote security? You kind of talked about it a little bit, security assurance in an innovation lifecycle.
So I think this is a very, very important question. I would say there's probably 5 steps. First is to embed security into every stage of the software development lifecycle, or the AI development lifecycle, as I called it. What does all that mean? I mean, integrating data privacy and security principles from the start, conducting regular threat modeling, training developers in secure coding practices, and integrating automated security tools. Okay, that's one. 2 is, we touched upon earlier, Kim, is very, very important. Fostering a culture of security, especially in the AI age and the quantum age coming, is that emphasizing that security is a collective responsibility of the whole team, and it is a team sport, making sure that everyone's collaborating to develop securely and implement those practices, and then continuing to provide security awareness training to employees at all levels and periodically, right? The third pillar, I would say, is deploying robust data protection measures. That's classifying sensitive data, appropriately, and implementing the correct fit-for-purpose access controls, ensuring that sensitive data is encrypted both at rest as in transit, right? Using strong encryption algorithms, in implementing things such as dynamic SIM and observability stuff that you can protect your data and raise alerts or fix permissions problems and things like that. And then also constantly assessing the security of third-party libraries, APIs, and services before integrating them into system. That's something. The fourth is, I think, embracing agile principles in data governance. This is something we know about agile typically in software industry, right? Software development. But I think using the same agile methodologies like sprints and retrospectives to continuously refine data governance practices as you start to release AI models. And that's very, very important, right? You can't just set it and forget it. It's not good. And then also regularly evaluating the organization's risk landscape to identify and proactively address emerging vulnerabilities. And if that's going to be successful, also establishing feedback loops to encourage team members to share insights and lessons learned, enabling continuous improvement in security measures. And therefore, I even see some communities of practice that will spring up from community organizations that collaborate too, with not sharing confidential data, but sharing best practices, because this problem is bigger than any one public company or any government organization. I think that would be good. The power of federation will help that. And the last thing is, I think, utilizing automation and technology, right? Because you need to be using automated tools for data lineage tracking, data quality monitoring, and self-service data access to streamline the data management and reducing human errors in the age of AI. And lastly, I think, understanding that it's very important to prioritize adaptive, innovative security technologies powered by observability to adapt to changing threats. Because, like I said earlier, visibility is not enough. In the age of AI, observability is your friend more than visibility. So that's what I have to answer the previous question, Kim.
Well, as I said, Arun, 45 minutes goes really fast and that time flew by. So I think you would probably agree.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, thank you so much, Arun. That was a ton of information. And I really appreciate you spending this last 45 minutes with us. If anybody wants to get in touch with you or have any other questions, what's the best way that they
Yeah.
should get in touch with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. Just connect with me and connect. And I'm pretty good about responding to, and then I can always share my email or whatever. We can meet in person if they're Detroit, whatever. Happy to have those conversations. And thank you, Kim, for everything. Really a pleasure always. I consider myself part of the FutureCon family, as you know. I've been on the advisory board, so I'm very happy to be here again with you.
Yeah, Arun DeSouza. I'm going to see you out in Detroit in 2 days. He's the managing director at ProFortis Solutions. He's also the new board president at ISSA Detroit Chapter. So very excited about that. He'll be out at our Detroit event. So if you guys are going to be there, stop by and talk to him. He'll be over at that ISSA table and he'll be in our audience. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Again, thank you so much, Arun. We'll have to have you back on the show again. That time went by way too fast. So everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of And Security for All. I hope you all have a great Tuesday and the rest of your week. Stay safe, stay secure, and tune in again next week. We'll see you all. Thanks, everyone.